Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and we have the background. All right, we got a new background. It's ever so slightly different. Well, just to give you a little hint of what the learning process is like, I thought I would be doing an early morning stream because I thought I would have the last video ready by the early morning. Spent the whole day editing it. What can you do? What you can't. Anyway, we've got some interesting things today. We've got January 6 suspects fleeing rather than facing trial. We've got the GOP turning on Fox. And then we have what you can do about the American economy. Believe it or not, we are not so far off. We are not so far off from a place where we can actually live comfortably, where the American dream is achievable genuinely by everyone in America, to my knowledge, for the first time in America's existence. We can be there. There's just a couple of changes we got to make. We got a whole video going through that, but let's start with these January 6 suspects because we do not want them to escape justice. On the WYCDnetwork.com, we've got their pictures up and who to contact if you spot them. They are most likely trying to flee the country. Here's Michael Popak with more. Michael Popak from Midas Touch and the podcast Legal AF, giving the breakdown.
This is Michael Popak, Legal AF. We've got two Jan 6 defendants on the lam, breaking free from their pretrial detention, breaking away from the federal marshals, and have disappeared. One of them, Olivia Pollack, was scheduled to go to trial yesterday in front of Judge Carl Nichols in the District of Columbia, and she's nowhere to be found, and her court-appointed lawyer doesn't know where she is either. And Joe Hutchinson, her buddy from Georgia, decided to kind of skedaddle as well. And so now the FBI and the federal marshals are in hot pursuit trying to find them. They are some of the most violent Jan 6 defendants. That's who's going to decide not to go to trial, right? The ones that were really crazy and really violent. Olivia Pollack, armed with a vest, a bulletproof vest, tried to steal a baton from a police officer, punched him in the face, did all sorts of things. She's the sister of another violent Jan 6 defendant, Jonathan Pollack, who's also on the lam, who they haven't been able to find. He assaulted multiple police officers, punched them in the face, used their shields to bash them in their heads, did all sorts of things. So this is the little dark secret of the FBI and the Department of Justice. There's a handful of people who participated in the Jan 6 insurrection, who are treasonous, traitorous people who they've not been able to apprehend, or once they were apprehended, they were able to break free.
Yeah, why was Olivia Pollack out on bail? That's my understanding, is that she was out on bail and she just didn't appear for her court appointment. What about this person, this violent criminal, according to prosecutors? What about this person seemed like they should be out on bail? I don't want these people out in society. I don't want to look down my street and think maybe somebody that beat a police officer in an attempted overthrow of our democracy is walking around because they haven't had their trial yet, and it's apparently fine just to let them walk free. You don't have to give bail if the suspect is suspected of doing something like that. You can say, no, this person is too dangerous. This person is unlikely to show up for trial, for example. This person might assault somebody else. I would say somebody that attacked a police officer in the January 6 riots should not be out of a cell. At least until the trial has come and gone and a decision has been made. because that's a hell of an accusation. And if the justice system believes it to be true, hence a prosecutor is attempting to prove that in a court of law, there's no reason that person should be out on bail. That's crazy.
And now we've got two more with Olivia Pollack and Joe Hutchinson. Joe Hutchinson, obviously knowing he was going to do this, I think he tried to distract the Department of Justice because he wrote a letter to the DOJ on February 27th asking permission because he represents himself. He's pro se. He's his own lawyer. He wanted to go, and I think this was all bullshit, but he wanted to go, so the letter said, to see his buddy Olivia Pollack's trial to both give her support and, in his words, to learn the rules and the procedures since he was going to be representing himself. I think that was just a way to have the Department of Justice and the federal marshals lower their guard around him so that he could find a back door to get out of and escape with Olivia Pollack. So now the three of them, Olivia Pollack, Jonathan Pollack, who was never apprehended, although there's plenty of video evidence of him assaulting police officers, and Joe Hutchinson are all out. Where could they go? Well, let me remind everybody.
The Keystone Cops over here. Yeah. Go meet up with that other suspected terrorist or insurrectionist, they're both. Yeah, go meet up with that person. That's great. Yeah, you should go to their area. Oh, you're going to tell us, defendant in the J6 case, that you want us to release you so that you can go into the same place that another one of these traitors is. Great. He could have streamed it. I assure you, if this was a defendant that was in any way associated with the left wing in America, they would not get this treatment. I say this having covered easily, 200 court cases? Wouldn't get, God, more than that. Regardless, they would not get this treatment. That's an insane way to treat defendants like this. But entirely predictable in the United States of America because they were right-wing. And there is a different standard of justice for that group. It's disgusting.
That we have one, at least, of the Jan 6 insurrectionists who was never arrested, but is wanted on the wanted poster, one of the most wanted men that the FBI is looking for, and that's Evan Newman. Evan Newman, you may recall, in March of 2022, escaped to Belarus. Yes, that Belarus, the one next to Russia and Ukraine, and got political asylum and is still living in Belarus. And it gives interviews there like he's some celebrity talking about the personal freedom and liberty that he has in the dictatorship, in the communist dictatorship of Belarus, where he'd apparently rather live than back in the good old US of A.
Just want to point out the extra special irony. Belarus is a country that actually did have a rigged election. The current leader of Belarus, I think his name is pronounced ass kisser of Putin, was basically installed by Putin. And there are, to this day, resistance efforts against it. He relies on Putin to stay in power, as a matter of fact. It's absolutely what Belarus means white Russia. And he was willing to bow down to Putin and to essentially become make his country a client state of Russia in exchange for him getting to wear the tallest hat in that client state. He sold out his country. So this guy flees an actual democracy that he tried to overthrow in order to go to a country that has undergone the very thing he said he was fighting against. Scumbag. Ridiculous.
And maybe that's what Joe Hutchinson and Olivia Pollack are trying to do too. Get out.
But we still didn't learn. We still didn't learn with these two.
Of this country and make their way to the other places that might give them asylum. It's going to be very difficult to do because they are literally fugitives from justice on the most wanted list for the FBI, and it's going to be very hard for them to take a train, plane, or an automobile out of this country and get somewhere else that's going to give them any kind of amnesty or immunity from prosecution. You might be wondering, isn't that a crime, failure to appear in federal court? Oh, it is. And it's a serious one, and how serious that crime is and how many years you get for that crime, the crime of failure to appear, depends on what charges you were looking at that you have run away from. So under 18 USC 3146, failure to appear in federal court, you start with what are the charges that are against you. The charges that are against Olivia Pollack and Joe Hutchinson are serious. They're up to 20-year felonies for obstruction, for assault, for battery, and all of that. That means they could also get a failure to appear criminal charge, and they will, against them. And that could be separately sentenced up to 15 years in prison, and it's not served concurrently, meaning you don't get any benefit for serving the time for the crime that you were originally charged with. You're going to do that time, and then you're going to start your failure to appear sentence separately. So they could be looking at like 35 years in jail now because they have failed to appear. And that's going to be up to Carl Nichols. I mean, all he's done so far is said, that's interesting. Let me issue a bench warrant. See, now we get another lesson in legal AF world, a bench warrant being issued. Federal marshals and FBI scramble to execute the search warrant or the bench warrant to apprehend Joe Hutchinson and Olivia Pollack. And if they're successful, which the judge is giving the Department of Justice and the government some time because he postponed Olivia Pollack's trial until August. So from March till August, but she's not going to get any breaks. That'll give them time to find her, apprehend her, arrest her, and do a superseding indictment, a new indictment, adding a new charge of failure to appear and ask for up to 15 years. Also,
I hope other judges with control over how the court cases of Jan 6 defendants go take note. Believe it or not, this is an untrustworthy group of folks. How many got to scram before we start to take that seriously? Wild. I am glad to hear, though, that I didn't know that about increasing the sentence. Good. This is not a person I want out in the wild. By the way, commenter NH Moreno, really interesting question. I'm going to get to that absolutely after this.
So the judge could and will revoke their bond, put them into federal detention, pretrial detention from now until August. So she's not going to be going home with another ankle bracelet. And neither is Joe Hutchinson. They're both going to be going to the federal detention center straight away, and they're going to sit there. And now they got a really pissed off judge who's going to remember all of this at sentencing. Now, some of you might ask, is the jury going to learn about this? And the jury will learn about it because it's going to be added to their indictment, meaning the jury's going to have to decide on the issue of, well, this is relatively simple. Did they run from the authorities? Yes. Did they need to be apprehended? Yes. Did they fail to appear? Yes. That is a conviction. And then it's up to the judge, Judge Nichols, who's none too pleased, I assume, that these two people have decided to escape justice and will be in charge of their sentencing at the appropriate time. So I look for some of the highest sentences that have been given to Jan 6 defendants, the ones that range between 80 and 96 months. These two morons, these two dangerous, treasonous, traitorous people, Hutchinson and Pollack, and if they ever catch the brother, him too, you're going to be seeing numbers that are off the charts because of this additional failure to appear. But this is a race against time. This is literally like the movie The Fugitive, because they got to capture them and catch them before they make it to somewhere else, like somehow to Belarus.
It's not like the movie The Fugitive. If you watched The Fugitive, Michael Popak, you would know that Harrison Ford was an innocent man. And time again, we have seen, at least the January 6 defendants so far, not innocent. No one-armed man here.
With maybe some fake IDs and false identifications, and then we lost them. Then they're going to be sitting there for the rest of their lives instead of where they should be, which is in the dock of a federal courthouse and in a trial and then sentenced related to that. So we've got another sentencing yesterday, though, or another conviction yesterday, which is also important. I want to bring it up on my hot take just so everybody knows what's going on. Robert Geiswein, Gieswein, he's a 3%er. That's what he calls himself. He was an active participant with the Proud Boys. He also was outfitted on Jan 6 with a helmet, a flak jacket, goggles, and a bat, and used it, including chemical spray that he sprayed on police officers. And he had his own paramilitary group that he trained on the side called the Woodland Wild Dogs. Well, that Mr. Geiswein has admitted his guilt, pled guilty, entered into a plea deal where the federal government is going to recommend up to 4 years. I assume he's cooperating against the 3%ers and the Proud Boys as well. And that just happened yesterday as well. So let's bring it all home. You got Tucker Carlson, who's self-selecting videotape of, Jan 6 people, I guess, picking daisies and just wandering around, or, the one guy with the Chewbacca hat who Capitol Police tried to diffuse the situation. It's because they were outnumbered. So rather than fight him, they sort of opened the door and let him go somewhere, hoping they would buy some time to get some reinforcements. That's Tucker Carlson. See, he was given a tour by the Capitol Police. And Donald Trump, running on a new platform of I'm going to absolve and give amnesty.
We cannot let that guy take power. Can't happen. Fortunately, I think the Department of Justice could possibly be pressured enough to actually move and prosecute Trump. But my God, we cannot let that guy take power again.
Give a pardon to all Jan 6 people. Well, then they've never seen the police reports and the videos related to Evan Newman, who attacked police, living now in Belarus. Joe Hutchinson attacked police, now on the run, on the lam, a fugitive. Olivia Pollack, who attacked police, who is now a fugitive. And her brother, Jonathan Pollack, who's probably the biggest defendant, who punched, attacked, beat police. Why don't you focus on those aspects of the video instead of on the ones that you self-select, edit, and then give a running commentary that is incorrect and false about Jan 6. If you want to see Tucker and Trump, if you want to see the mayhem and the bloodshed and the battleground that was the Capitol because of Donald Trump, all you got to do is watch the video, the best of clips from the Jan 6 committee. They're all out there. Watch those. You're going to absolve all those people of liability and criminal responsibility. You're going to make all those people patriots if you get elected. If you didn't understand who you're voting for in 2024, you better start making your choices, because now you see what happens when the inmates run the asylum and the Republicans and Trump try to get back into office, and you see how they're going to try to rewrite history.
Yeah, it ain't a game, folks. These are serious criminals. These are attack cops with a bat, run rather than face a judge, denounce the USA and move to Belarus criminals. Not a game. Fortunately, there is something you can do specifically about these two punks. On wickednetwork.com, there is a page that has their picture and the FBI contact information. If you see them, contact the FBI. Say, oh, I got them. Obviously, they are dangerous criminals. Keep your distance, but call it in. Cannot let these folks be out in the world wreaking havoc. So again, that's wickednetwork.com. Link is in the description. There is a page specifically dedicated to these two punks. Go get them. had a real interesting question. I would love to know the context in which N.H. Moreno is going to be speaking. Oh, I live in Colorado, and she is my horrible congresswoman, and I want to ask her, who is the author of the stinking letter, and to whom it was addressed, or if Rupert Murdoch is responsible for J6. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Ask her any question which will be uncomfortable to answer. And questions with obvious answers that you know she can't answer honestly. For example, what you've put right there, I don't even know if I have notes on that. Yeah. Ask her if Rupert Murdoch is responsible for J6. Beautiful. It's a great question to ask her. I'll toss another one out there. What should people do if they don't think that you were elected honestly? How much information would you need, or would they need, to object to your election? Better yet, if you had any evidence that the election was stolen, why didn't you present it to court? Why didn't you make it part of the 60 court cases that got rejected? If you did have it and you didn't, why didn't you present it to court? If you didn't have it to present to court, why did you keep saying the election was stolen when you did not have proof? You just thought. But honestly, you've already got a great one. If Rupert Murdoch is responsible for January 6th, what a wonderful, wonderful dilemma that gives her. Especially because we are at a point, and we're about to go into a whole segment about this, we're at a point where there is a wedge being driven between MAGA psychos and their disinformation network. I'll tell you, anything we can do to widen that is great. You could even go so far as to ask her if she had heard that Fox News didn't believe any of the election lies. That's a great question. But I don't want to put too much in your head, because it looks like you are going in armed and ready. That is let me use better phrasing than that, given this is politics. It looks like you are going in well prepared already. And whatever you're feeling in the moment, whatever you ask, is going to be great. Just go get her. You got this. Let me know how it goes. I would love to know. Granny P says, NH, during her days as... Oh, yes. Talking to Moreno. During her days as an escort, she was photographed wearing some awesome stilettos. I'm wondering where she purchased them. Franny, you're killing me. I love it. Not typical Walmart or outdoor man items. Meow. Yes, indeed. Beautiful. Future Generations says Garland is causing the end of federal authority. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Oh, super chat from N.H. Moreno. Thank you so much. I listened to the Danbury, Connecticut video thrice today. Excellent. I am very likely to do a stream on, or include that in a stream in the near future. That is delightful. And yes, future Garland is causing the end of federal authority. He's trying his damnedest, I'll tell you. Now, in defense of Garland, just went through a whole book on why it's hard to prosecute bosses. I understand why it's a difficult job, but it's not 3 years difficult. And there are some rather low-hanging fruit prosecutions out there, which I can't even devil's advocate my way to explaining why this man is not hasn't done it yet. He's just not the man for the job. Well, if there is any good news in this, it is that the GOP is turning on Fox. It's a machine destroying itself, because Fox is largely responsible for the current state of the GOP. So I love to see this havoc. Now, if you were listening yesterday, we said two things. Number one, CNN is really going to make a strong play to be the new conservative network. Not the same thing that Fox was, but a network for reasonable conservatives. That's likely going to be a business tactic they try. And we said that GOP senators were much more likely to side with the CNN sort of a little bit closer to the center side. We have that today. And as we were doing that stream last night, this clip was playing on television. And it is a wonderful sign of things to come because this is conservative infighting. I don't even really want to call MAGA conservative. They're not. But this is Republican infighting, and you love to see it. Here's CNN talking about Tucker Carlson's ridiculous stunt with the January 6th footage, which has served thus far only to embarrass Fox further and MAGA as always.
Offensive and misleading. That's how the chief of the U.S. Capitol Police is describing Fox News host Tucker Carlson's attempt to, in effect, rewrite history of the January 6th insurrection, describing it as a peaceful gathering. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, you may remember, gave Carlson access to tens of thousands of hours of footage from the Capitol attack.
Well, a number of his fellow Republican lawmakers, senators specifically, not too happy with Fox's decision to play that with Tucker Carlson downplaying the insurrection.
It was a mistake, in my view, for Fox News to depict this in a way that's completely at variance with what our chief law enforcement official here at the Capitol thinks.
I was there on January 6th. I saw what happened. I saw the aftermath. Look, there was violence on January 6th. I think the footage that's available should be made available to all networks, and everybody should be able to see for themselves just what kind of chaos we had on that day.
I think it's bullshit. I was here. I was down there. And I saw maybe a few tourists, a few people who got caught up in things, but when you see police barricades breached, when you see police officers assaulted, I just don't think it's helpful.
He's not the only one. CNN Chief Congressional Correspondent Manu Raju joining us now from Capitol Hill. So, Manu, you also spoke to McCarthy last night. What is he saying?
Yeah, he defended the decision. In fact, he did not agree with the criticism from Senator McConnell and also the criticism from the U.S. Capitol Police Chief.
Oh,
who said
wait a minute.
that this portrayal.
I just want to go back and really highlight that. Remember, senators were there. Senators were in the eye of the, well, not even the eye of the storm. They were in the worst of the storm. Senators had their actual lives in danger. It's just important to get an idea of where these people are coming from so you can better understand what they're going to do and why they're doing it. You're elected to the House, you only have to appeal to your district. When you are elected to the Senate, you have to appeal to your whole state. So they're already more likely to be middle-of-the-road folks. Fair enough. Add in the fact that these are the people that were running for their lives. They're not going to put up with what they consider to be their juniors' nonsense. Beautifully. I mean, we didn't see this before. And now the infighting is out in the open. It's firm. It's really a good thing. I just say you should be a little bit careful because I tell you, I can't underline this enough. I am expecting, particularly in the days following the 2024 election, if things are the whooping I hope they're going to be for the Republicans, an influx of former Republicans joining the Democrats, perhaps even doing a deal where they widen whatever margins they won by and agreeing to pass certain legislation, blah, 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 blah. Be ready for that, and be ready for the kind of rhetoric you will see around that, including CNN trying to make comparisons between the far left and the far right. They do have some similarities, but none of the ones CNN will make. Just be ready for it.
on Fox News of January 6th was offensive, it was misleading, it was cherry-picked. Mitch McConnell saying he aligned himself squarely with that. And when I asked the speaker whether or not he regretted providing this footage to Tucker Carlson, who attempted to whitewash the events, the speaker defended his decision.
The footage that you gave Tucker Carlson last night, he went on and said this was a mostly peaceful chaos. As he said, he downplayed Brian Sicknick's death, said it was not related to January 6th, this was not an insurrection. Do you regret giving him this footage so he could whitewash the events of that day?
No, I said at the very beginning, transparency. And so what I wanted to produce for everybody is exactly what I said, that people could actually look at it and see what's gone on that day. But why
Yeah, I gave him that footage so people could look at and see what was going on that day. It was streamed from 1,000 phones live on social media. Everybody saw what was going on that day. It was combed through. The New York Times did a documentary on it, playing bit by bit by bit, moment by moment what happened. The January 6th committee had a filmmaker that was with the Oath Keepers behind the scenes release his footage to the January 6th committee, and they played it. It was a stunt. It's hilarious watching this guy flail because he's just got nothing. By the way, that poor son of a bee in the background, I used to be that guy. We don't have a cameraman. Get your cell phone, get over there. By the way, NH Moreno, you are easily the most interesting fellow I've talked to today. I really want to ask you a follow-up question about your comment. Let me get to the main screen following this. Oh, you know what? If you could, if you feel comfortable, don't feel that you have to. But if you feel comfortable talking about it, you say that you used to be MAGA from 2018 to 2021. I'm interested. What got you into MAGA in the first place, and what got you out of it? I'd very much like to talk a little bit about that. I'm interested in that side of the of this conversation because I think that's going to be the only way the country heals is if we understand how people got in, what's bringing them out, and how we can have real conversations about running our country. So yeah, by all means, leave the message in the comments. I'll pop in and talk about it after this.
Look, each person can come up with their own conclusion, but what I just wanted to make sure is I had transparency.
But no pressure.
So he continued to say that he wanted to provide for transparency, but would not explain why he provided it to Carlson, who has long had a history of downplaying the events of that day that McCarthy himself condemned immediately after that happened on the House floor days later, but really exposing the divide here between the House Republicans and Senate Republicans in particular over January 6th, the fallout of that, and the role of Donald Trump in the party going forward. McCarthy, of course, aligning him squarely with Trump, Mitch McConnell on the other side, taking a much different approach of how the party should handle these issues going forward, all being exposed now and over McCarthy's handling of this security footage and this attempt to provide a different light about what happened from January 6th by Fox News and by some House Republicans as well.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Tillis, not mincing words there, calling it
No.
BS. Manu Raju, thanks so much. Well, today, newly disclosed messages from some of the biggest stars and executives at Fox News show that what they said and communicated in private contrasted what they told their viewers and repeated.
We played a little of this yesterday, but the new things that came out, they're so good. Ooh, I gotta play this.
Repeatedly. A trove of texts, emails, other material made public Tuesday as part of Dominion Voting Systems' $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against the right-wing channel. Fox's staff privately criticized, dismissed Trump's election fraud lies, even though the network continued to promote them on the air. Take a look at these messages from November 20th between Fox host Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham. Carlson writes, former Trump attorney Sidney Powell, who's sharing many of these lies, quote, is a nut, to which Ingraham replies, no serious lawyer could believe what they were saying. But just one night later, this is what Ingraham was saying on the air.
And she had her on after that.
Now, legal challenges continue in a number of states. Serious questions about vote counting, poll watcher access are outstanding. But unless the legal situation changes in a dramatic and, frankly, an unlikely manner, Joe Biden will be inaugurated on January 20th. Now, to say this does not mean I don't think that this election was rife with problems and potential fraud.
What annoys me is the cowardice. I get angry at the lies, but the cowardice is what annoys me. Going as close to the line as she can, she thinks, without going over it. Not quite saying stolen. But then Tucker Carlson, yada, 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 yada. It's just, I would have wished for braver villains in my time, you know? It's a depressing moment in politics, but fortunately, that is why we have dark humor, which I hope I've included in the next segment.
Despite what Tucker Carlson has said behind the scenes.
Oh, and Laura Ingraham looks like Satan's Barbie. There we go.
He is still, to this day, sowing doubts on air. This is from a show on Monday.
In retrospect, it is clear the 2020 election was a grave betrayal of American democracy. It is galling to be lectured about democracy by a man who took power in an election so sketchy that many Americans don't believe it was even real.
Why? Why don't they believe it was real? What was sketchy about it? None of the stuff you said on air, none of that was true. None of the stuff that prick right there said was going on was actually going on. And he said that in his text, he said that he knew that. So why was it sketchy? Oh, it wasn't sketchy. It went exactly as was predicted. Exactly as was predicted. Based on the rhetoric, based on what we knew about COVID at the time, and based on the amount of absentee ballots that were cast beforehand, it went exactly as predicted. Red mirage, blue wave. I was talking about that weeks beforehand. So this guy says that the other problem is a lot of Americans don't believe that the election was real. He's why. I honestly believe this deserves criminal charges. I do believe in a strong First Amendment. I do believe in the freedom of the press. That's not press. That is a guy knowingly lying. It's fraud. He is a fraud. At the very least, whatever FCC license they have should get yanked. And we should seriously consider reinstating the fairness doctrine, which was eliminated in the 80s, which led to the rise of the misinformation.
Joining me now to discuss, NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik. David, good to have you on today.
Oh, Folkenflik. Ugh.
Great to join you, Jim.
So,
I'm
David,
hot and cold on him.
Based on what we're seeing from Tucker Carlson, despite the fact that now we know he was lying to his viewers around the election, saying one thing in private, one thing on the air, he is still calling the election into question. Are any Murdoch-owned publications, whether it be Fox, Fox Business, New York Post, Wall Street Journal,
I take it back. This is good Folkenflik stuff. When he does critiques of the media, he does tend to be, he knows his stuff, is all I'm saying.
Are the viewers or readers of any of those publications seeing what we're seeing here, the revelations from these court documents?
Oh, I think if you read the Wall Street Journal, you're getting a fairly straightforward news report in its pages, often prominently displayed, of what actually transpired. And I think you're seeing folks from the Wall Street Journal's news side trying to ensure that its reading public believes in its brand promise, that of telling the news straight and without fear or favor. It's a game that Murdoch plays. He sort of separates in his mind how he treats his upscale broadsheet newspapers like the Times of London and the Wall Street Journal from the tabloids like the New York Post, which he treats more like Fox News, which is you're going to see the political influence throughout the entire report.
Understood. Now we should note, is it correct Fox News has banned any discussion of this, given it is Fox News where the majority of these lies were shared with viewers?
Yeah, you saw Fox News' own chief media correspondent and anchor, Howie Kurtz, come forward about 10 days ago and say that he was barred from discussing on his show that he disagreed with it, but that was the corporate edict. That's an extraordinary admission, because for Fox News to smother coverage of the biggest story in media and one of the biggest stories in politics right now is a concession that they're not putting news values first.
Now, I have no shortage of critiques for Fox News or anybody. I'll let everybody have it with both barrels. But I gotta stop using that talk. Good Lord, figuratively. I mean, for God's sake. But I will actually, believe it or not, stick up. Oh God, it doesn't feel right. Stick up for Fox a little bit on this. I don't think they can talk about it. Other than to say, we acknowledge this is happening, but we can't talk about it because we're being sued. Think about this going the other way. Would you want a news organization being like, they're coming to get us, they're coming to get us, get out there and stop them? Hey, jury that could potentially hear this, don't believe a word there's, obviously I don't think they'd be dumb enough to be that blatant, but they would spin just by the very, and any news organization would, just because they were involved. I think that might be CNN just really wanting to hack down Fox. I'm fine with that, but as far as media critiques go, and here after I said Folk and Flick was good at media critiques, I don't necessarily agree with their take there. That said, everything else, absolutely. So, what can you do about this? Widen that divide. There's a lot of people that are being lied to right now. And as CNN just pointed out, helpfully, a little bit catty, but still, right now Fox isn't talking about it. So these folks that have been drowned in misinformation, they're not getting it. This is an opportunity to talk to them. Just ask, did you hear what Tucker Carlson said about you? Did you hear what Tucker Carlson said about Donald Trump? Did you hear what Tucker Carlson said about the January 6th insurrection? Did you hear what he said about the conspiracies? They won't be able to get that answer from Fox, which means they will have to get it from other news organizations. Other news organizations are covering it honestly for the most part. OAN isn't talking about it, at least not much that I have seen. What's the other one? I draw a blank. But the point is, the reason they're not doing it is they don't want the same thing to happen to them. So this is a prime opportunity to wean people off of a misinformation network. It's a rare opportunity. Take advantage of it. Just ask the questions. It can only be healthy. NH Moreno. Oh, my word. Thank you for the $5 super chat. We're going to get to that in a moment, but I definitely want to read your backstory here a little bit. I get sick to my stomach when I see her on stage. Oh, yes, we talked about that. Of course, I always read Noam Chomsky. Interesting. George Orwell, Emma Goldman, Howard Zinn, etc. I was an alcoholic, did not have a TV from 2015 to present, by way of explanation. Fair enough. And generally, substance abuse does come with other hard times. People generally don't end up in such a situation without some hurt. So I'm sorry you went through that. I'm glad to see the past tense on that. Sounds like you got it under control, and I'm glad for you. Good on you, sir. If not, hey, your old pal Jake's here to help. Let me know, and I will be delighted to do anything I can. I listened to lots of right-wing media, and Trump gave a bring them home speech and seemed to be there for the little guy. Victor Davis Hanson and the likes. I always was anachronistic. I like that. I just said it led down a rather dark path. And I thought Trump was a breakout anti-establishment guy. I want to get back to that. That's interesting. I literally chose to stop thinking and just try believing. Interesting. And since I got a factory job making $15 hourly, I thought that was wealth. And then the $5 super chat again. Thank you. If I had never read Noam Chomsky, Orwell, watched Holy Kool-Aid on YouTube, and never was inoculated, I'd still be MAGA. I see people still MAGA. Sucks. Yeah, it does. Here's the insidious thing, though, and we've talked about this on the channel before. I hope you'll consider sticking around for other streams. Trump really just took the right-wing grift and to its logical conclusion. He used it for his own purposes, but the whole way that works is that they take a true symptom and they lie about the cause of that symptom so that you will take the medication they are selling. That's the grift. He indeed, he is a populist. He appeals to populist notions and he appeals to populist desires, but then he lies about what are causing those problems. And it breaks my heart. And when I said earlier, there are things that the far left and the far right have in common, but CNN won't talk about it. That's it. It is, we agree on the symptoms, that there are swaths of America that are just taken advantage of, that are lied to, and that are bled of their wealth and their labor constantly. And it just sucks because, then Trump turns around and says, and it was the Jews or whatever crazy, the trans people or et cetera, et cetera. It's rough to see, but I'm so glad to see that you read your way out of this. You educated yourself. That's cool as hell, man. Honestly, you should be proud of yourself, and you give me hope for reaching folks. I hope that I end up providing for somebody else what my betters in Chomsky and et al. Have had done for you. That's awesome, man. And thank you for the super chat. I genuinely appreciate it. Well, speaking of, allow me to give my pitch for how we can solve some of these populist problems. In my head, I told myself this little video I was going to do was going to take about 40 minutes to edit. And 10 hours later, because I'm still not so handy with the pixel art yet, 10 hours later, here we are doing the stream well after was initially intended. Anyway, I watched some Sam Cedar recently. He had somebody on talking about transitioning from capitalism to the next thing. And I thought that was such an interesting concept. We are not quite at a place where we can truly leave behind capitalism entirely, simply because it's the legacy system. And yet, we do need to make preparations. We need to take the baby steps necessary to get started on this. Otherwise, when we arrive at the place where the American labor is no longer needed because we got robots for everything, it's just going to be the robots, their masters, and us under their boots. Don't worry. There is a way out. Or rather, there's a way to turn this around and make the American economic system actually work for us. At least so I think. Here's my pitch. The biggest problem we have in America today is that we did not prepare for success. The rich in our country now take home more money than the middle class do every year. Why is that? What happened? Didn't used to be the case. We used to have a robust middle class. Now we have a shrinking. In fact, we have a shrunk middle class. Well, what's going on there? How is it the bosses collectively take home more money than the people who actually get things done? Well, let's use a hypothetical example. Let's say there is a company which is required to maintain its profits to make 100 gears a day. And that company has one boss and 2 employees for the sake of this, keeping it simple. Each of those employees then is making 50 gears a day. A machine comes along. It's a gear maker. One employee is required to run it, and that machine can produce 100 gears a day. The boss will use their built-up money to purchase the machine, and then they'll look at their employees and say, we don't need 2 people running this thing, and we only need 100 gears a day. You're fired, John. Jim, you are now expected to work your same 40 hours a week to collect the same pay that you always did. And John, you're out of luck. That's because the means of production, that gear-making machine, that's owned by the boss. The people have chosen, as in you and me, through our voting, we have chosen to have no say in what happens with that machine. That is what we need to change. We need to put rules on the means of production, also known as well-regulated capitalism. We need to put rules that say, when technology develops in this way, you cannot merely kick out the old employees. You cannot just demand more output from your new employees. They have to be compensated. This is how we are going to push America forward.
For the last kind of couple of hundred years, there's been this overlap between what makes capitalists rich and what gives us as a society the capacity to produce more stuff. Capitalists will usually argue that this is a kind of an eternal feature of capitalism, and it's the only way it can be, and we have to carry on with this because it's been so good. But actually, it's kind of we should see that as a historically situated confluence between those two things, between what is good for capitalists and what is good for society. It's not always good for society. It's not good for anyone in society by any means, but it certainly has given us the ability to produce as much stuff as we need. Our problems historically have been we don't have enough stuff. Now we have plenty, we kind of have an abundance, and it doesn't feel like it to many people in the world. But then, partly that's because the poorest 3.5 billion people in the world have the same wealth as the richest 26 people in the world. So this terribly unequal distribution is something that needs addressing. But in terms of the productive capacity, we now have, we throw away 28% of the food we produce, but at the same time, 9 million people starve to death every year. So our problem isn't that we're not making enough food or anything else. Our problem is that we have a system in which capitalism is just incapable of distributing what we can produce to the people who need it. Because if the people who need food don't have any money to pay for it, and capitalism isn't going to provide it to them, it will just throw the food away instead. So capitalism has got us to this position.
We should say, this argument this argument is predicated on the notion that we can all agree people should not be starving to death. Right. Well, yeah, I mean, but I don't I think there are people who are sort of like, well, if they don't have the money, but amongst non-sociopathic people, theoretically, we should be living in a world where the only hindrance to feeding everybody would be capacity, as opposed to the way that we've decided to distribute it.
We are not in Gene Roddenberry's socialist utopia yet, but we're also not living in 1938 when the 40-hour work week was determined to be the amount of work a person had to do to earn a living. Half the population wasn't allowed to work, and computers were the size of a bus. Many of our problems exist only because the American worker is competing against their own tools as people try to stay relevant while automation replaces whole industries left and right. We need to begin the transition. That could take the form of decreasing the amount of hours that are considered full-time, or we could lower the age of retirement. Or we could begin a universal basic income. Or we could nationalize industries like energy or internet providers. Or we could do a combination of all these things, so long as it scales with increased productivity. Whichever we decide is best, we'll take the same route to get there: industry regulation and higher taxes on the rich. Regulation is what forces capitalists to only profit off of things that benefit people, while deregulation allows capitalists to profit off things that harm people. Higher taxes on the ultra-rich keeps the greediest among us from hoarding the benefits of our labor, while disincentivizing financial crime. After all, why would Bernie Madoff steal another billion if he's going to lose 90% of it in taxes? Start with regulations that ensure that what is profitable for a business is also good for the country. That means strict environmental regulations and much stronger tax laws. It would not only pull people out of poverty, it would be good for capitalism itself. Regulations are what stop a CEO of a chair manufacturing company from cutting down the whole forest because they're retiring in 10 years and they don't care that there will be no wood for the company to make chairs out of in 20 years. At the same time, we need to deal with the theft of American wealth by billionaires. This can be handled by raising taxes on the ultra-wealthy to pay for government services and infrastructure. If you're worried about the specter of socialism, don't be. Existing socially funded groups are police, firefighters, military. We fund the roads socially. Things that, for the most part, we agree that we all may require at some point. Stronger regulations on capitalism and fair taxes on the ultra-rich would allow us to catch up with countries like Canada, Norway, and England with Medicare for all, which, by the way, would be a cheaper way for all Americans to get health care. Toss in free adult education, and the United States could be on the upswing again on the world stage instead of the laughingstock it has become. Here's the definition of socialism: a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production should be regulated by the community as a whole, as opposed to private ownership. Note that it's the means of production, not the product. The product is privately owned. In other words, a farmer can sell the wheat that they grew because that's what they produced. And the farmer didn't have to buy the seeds from Monsanto first because the American people decide wheat seeds are free. Well, we're a long way off from that golden era where work only needs to be done by those who want to. The fact is, we're also no longer in the same place we were in 1938 when the 40-hour work week was established. It's time to start recognizing our surroundings and reacting accordingly. The way to get all of these things done is to support the most left-leaning candidates in your area because the left are the only ones currently pushing for these policies. At a minimum, vote in the primaries. If you'd like to do more, consider joining the Democratic Socialists of America and possibly even volunteering for the campaign of a politician in your area. And if you find that there are no politicians in your area that are significantly left-leaning, consider running for office yourself. Well, it's true that most politicians these days have a difficult job. I think you'll find being an honest politician as easy as pie. And I did want to read a couple of these comments here. Andrew Woznicki, hey, good to see you. The working people who make the products of the world are the ones making the money for the company owners. Let me make sure my mic is on. It is. Good. Are the ones making the money for the company owners. Those working people should be making the money, period, not the owners. I about 95% agree with you. I do think, believe it or not, that the leader of a company has a role, certainly. However, there comes a point where they are not working anymore. And I even agree, if you did the initial risk, you should get a payoff. You should be able to wet your beak a little bit. But I'm for having rich Americans that have, say, $450 million. To me, that's an appropriately rich American. Okay. You invent Facebook, you get $450 million. You get $750 million. What you don't get is $14 billion, Mark Zuckerberg. That's too much. It's just too much. By and large, we are in agreement. Jim Green, socialism is the only thing that keeps capitalism in check. It must survive and thrive. Yes, sir. And, oh gosh, I'm drawing an embarrassing blank now. You know what? We're going to go on to Audible. Who did I read that book from? Help me. Tom Hartman. Never mind. I just read the what do they call it? The Hidden History of Neoliberalism. And by Tom Hartman. I really recommend it. I'm going to try to figure out a way to get snippets of the audio on stream in a visually intriguing manner. But yeah, I mean, you're saying pretty much exactly what Tom Hartman was saying. And I wholeheartedly agree. It is actually for the benefit of capitalism. Even if you're somebody that, and I don't suggest you are, but even if you were somebody that is all about capitalism, never wants it to go away, it is healthy for capitalism to have strong socialist policies, because then there is a foundation for the customer base to subsist on, to flourish on, and to encourage healthy competition. Catherine Wolf, agree. Jim Green. Yeah, Jim, you knocked it out of the park with that one, wholeheartedly. So I did want to add, this is a great stream, a serendipitous stream for this. We do have a website now. It's wickednetwork.com. I'm looking to do interviews. If you know somebody that you think it would be interesting for me to interview, go to the contact page on wickednetwork.com and let me know. And one of the folks I would very much like to interview are people that were former Trump supporters. So if you would, I don't ask anybody who necessarily watches this channel to feel obligated. Do not feel obligated. But if you think it would be fun to do a Zoom interview where we talk about your experience, I would love to do that. Here's the link. If you know anybody that is a former Trump supporter, have them contact me at that link right there. In addition, if you have somebody that you think it would be that you think would be beneficial to feature on this channel, we could spread their message a little bit. An organizer, a local politician, do let me know, because I am very much enjoying the interviews we've been doing lately. And by the way, we've got a bunch of them up on the channel, so go have a look if you haven't seen those. Ooh. Well, I'll tell you, folks, that was more editing than I'm used to. I am worn out. I'm going to start chopping this up for the night. Andrew Woznicki says, I'm not saying the company owners shouldn't make any money, just not more than their labor. Just a correction. No, I wholeheartedly agree. I get what you're saying. I very much am missing the old nitpicky debates I used to be able to get into, man. Interview Tom Hartman. He'd be happy to talk with you, I'll bet. Do you think so? All right, I'm going to reach out to him. I've seen his YouTube channel. Fella's got a lot of, his time's valuable. But if anybody's going to do it for the sake of the cause, probably Tom Hartman. All right, Franny, you got it. I'm going to reach out to Tom Hartman. Fingers crossed. Never mind. I was going to be cheeky. Don't listen to me right now. I will reach out to Tom Hartman. But it's time to go editing for your old pal, Jake. Thank you very much for joining me today. Folks, Mr. Moreno, thank you so much for the super chats. If you like the stream, please leave a like. Consider giving it a subscribe. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake. I'll see you next time.